She didn't always feel this way. There was a time she was warm, soft, giving. A time she walked into a room and bent herself to fit it, smiling even when she wasn't okay, laughing when she wanted to cry, and nodding politely while her spirit screamed for someone to ask, "Are you really all right?" But no one ever did, because to them, she seemed fine, easy to be around, low maintenance, the kind of woman who never made a scene, never demanded anything, the kind of woman you praise for being so strong, because she never lets it show. But strength, that's not what she felt. What she felt was buried, tight, like something raw wrapped in silk and shoved into her chest. And then one day something shifted, not in a dramatic, loud way, but quietly, subtly. She didn't laugh at the joke. She didn't respond to the text. She didn't show up to keep the peace. The people around her noticed, but they didn't understand. They thought she was being rude, difficult, cold. But the truth is, she was tired. Tired of playing nice. Tired of smiling through disrespect. Tired of being good, when all it ever got her was invisible. This is what happens when a woman stops being nice. She knew exactly what she wanted to say. In that moment, during the argument, the offhand comment, or the quiet humiliation dressed as politeness, her body lit up with truth. Her heartbeat quickened, her hands clenched. And for a second, just 1 second, she was ready to speak. But something stopped her. Not logic, not grace, but fear. A quiet voice inside whispered, "If you explode, you'll be the problem. If you speak with anger, they'll call you unstable. If you show how much it hurt, they'll only see the mess, not the cause." So she swallowed her words again. She softened her tone. She adjusted her face. She made her voice small, her posture smaller, her presence as unthreatening as possible. She said, "It's fine." She even smiled. And later, alone in the bathroom or lying awake in the dark, she cursed herself for not saying what needed to be said, replaying every line, every comeback she should have delivered. But the moment had passed. Again. And every time she did that, she told herself she was being mature, that she was choosing peace. But silence is not peace. It's pressure, it's self-abandonment. It's a lifetime of unspoken truths gathering under the surface. And the longer she stayed quiet, the more she started to believe that maybe her feelings didn't matter. That maybe being calm was the only way to be taken seriously, even if it meant slowly disappearing. At first, it felt like control, choosing to stay calm, choosing to be understanding, choosing to take the high road. She thought it made her stronger, wiser, above the chaos. But deep down, it wasn't strength. It was fear dressed as maturity. And over time, the cost began to show. She started feeling tired, but not just physically. It was an exhaustion in her bones. A heaviness she couldn't shake. The kind of fatigue that follows you into every conversation, every room, every relationship. Because every time she smiled through a moment that hurt, it took something from her. A tiny withdrawal from her sense of self. And the withdrawals added up, until she didn't recognize herself in the mirror anymore. Until even the sound of her own voice felt foreign, too careful, too rehearsed. She became the woman who never made anyone uncomfortable. But she was always uncomfortable herself. And no one noticed. They praised her for being low drama, for being easy, for never complaining. But no one ever asked what it was costing her to be that woman. What it took to keep swallowing her fire just to make everyone else feel warm. She didn't feel free. She felt trapped in her own kindness. Because being nice became a cage, decorated with compliments, lined with approval, but a cage nonetheless. And one day she woke up and realized the door had never been locked. She wasn't born this way. She didn't enter the world afraid of her voice, afraid of her feelings, afraid of taking up space. No, once upon a time she was loud. She was passionate. She laughed with her whole body. She cried without shame. She spoke without filtering. But slowly that changed. Maybe it started with someone telling her to calm down when she was simply excited, or calling her tears a tantrum when she was just overwhelmed. Maybe someone told her she was too much, too emotional, too intense, and she believed them. Because what she wanted most, more than being right, more than being heard, was to be loved. So she adjusted. She learned to tone it down, to be agreeable, to smile even when something felt off. Over time, those adjustments became habits. Those habits became a personality, and that personality became armor. She learned that approval had a price. That love was something you earned by making yourself smaller, quieter, easier to be around. And she was willing to pay it. Every time she silenced herself to make others comfortable, her truth sank deeper. Not gone, just buried. And the world rewarded her for it. They called her well-behaved, mature, graceful. But inside, a different story was taking shape. She didn't stop feeling, she just stopped showing. And the longer she hid, the further she drifted from who she really was. You see, the body doesn't forget. Every emotion that was silenced, every truth that went unspoken, it stayed. It shifted. It found new ways to express itself. Because feelings don't disappear just because you ignore them. And for her, that anger became anxiety. Not the kind of anxiety that screams. Not the kind that people recognize. No, it was quieter than that. It was the kind that looked like perfectionism. Like constant overthinking. Like triple checking every word before she pressed send. It was the racing mind that never shut off. The inability to rest, even when nothing was wrong. It was the voice in her head asking, was I too much? Should I have said that differently? Did I make them uncomfortable? She didn't recognize it as anger, because no one taught her that anger can look like this. Because when a woman isn't allowed to push back, when she's punished for raising her voice, when she learns that protecting her boundaries makes her difficult, she doesn't stop reacting. She just redirects. And her nervous system adapts. She becomes hyper-aware. She scans for danger in every room, even when there's none. She tries to control the environment instead of expressing how she really feels. Not because she wants to, but because somewhere along the way, she learned that if she can't fight, she has to please. Even if it destroys her. To the outside world, she was a dream. Calm, composed, kind. The kind of woman who never made a fuss. The kind who smiled through discomfort. The kind who was always understanding, always available, always saying, "It's okay, don't worry about me." And people loved her for it. They called her the peacemaker, the rock, the one who could be counted on no matter what. They praised her emotional maturity, her selflessness, her ability to keep it together. But no one asked what it was costing her to always keep it together. No one saw the way her hands shook in private, the nights she couldn't sleep because her mind wouldn't stop replaying conversations, the way her jaw stayed clenched even when she smiled, the quiet breakdowns behind closed doors. Because the truth is, she wasn't calm. She was exhausted. She wasn't composed. She was suppressing. And the more people admired her ability to handle things, the harder it became to admit that she wasn't handling anything at all. She was performing peace, while waging a war inside. Because somewhere along the way, she had confused being agreeable with being safe. She had learned that being easy to love meant being easy to ignore. And the more she disappeared behind that mask, the more the world applauded. But no one applauds when you finally take the mask off. There's a reason she never learned how to be angry. Psychologist Harriet Lerner wrote that women aren't taught to express anger, they're taught to fear it. Not just in others, but in themselves. Because when a man shows anger, he's seen as strong, assertive, in control. But when a woman shows anger, she's dramatic, hysterical, emotional, a problem. So she adapted. She gave her anger new names: stress, anxiety, overwhelm. She told herself she was just tired, that she was overthinking, but deep down she knew. She wasn't overwhelmed by life. She was overwhelmed by the act of constantly pretending. She wasn't too sensitive. She was too silent for too long. And so, she started to orbit around her anger, avoiding it, pushing it away, redirecting it into places it didn't belong. She snapped at herself, at small things, at safe people, but never at the source. Never where it needed to be said. And the result was a vicious cycle. Anger, guilt, shame, repeat. She'd feel the fire, then feel guilty for feeling it, then ashamed for not controlling it, and then push it back down, over and over again. Because she wasn't just afraid of her anger. She was afraid that if she ever really let it out, it might burn everything down. But what if it wasn't meant to destroy? What if it was meant to protect? Carl Jung called it the shadow, the hidden part of the self. The pieces we were told not to be, the instincts we were taught to bury. And for many women, that shadow is made of fire, of truth, of unapologetic emotion. Things like rage, assertiveness, power, boundaries. Not bad things, not dangerous things, but things the world decided were too much for a woman to carry. So they were shoved into the dark, and she carried on without them. Or at least she tried. But the shadow doesn't disappear just because you pretend it's not there. It waits. It shows up as the tightness in her chest when someone crosses a line. It flashes as resentment when she's expected to say yes again. It rises in the back of her throat when she smiles through yet another subtle disrespect. It shows up in unexpected tears, in silent rage, in chronic fatigue that no amount of rest can fix. She thinks she's broken, but she's not. She's just overflowing with parts of herself that were never allowed to live in the light. And eventually the body begins to protest, not with yelling or fists, but with numbness, depression, burnout. Because when you teach someone to reject their most honest reactions, they don't become calm. They become hollow, and then one day she stops. She stops replying to messages that drain her. She cancels plans she used to force herself to keep. She doesn't smile when she doesn't feel like it. She doesn't say yes just to avoid the discomfort of saying no. It doesn't look dramatic. It looks quiet, small, almost unnoticeable. But make no mistake, it's a rupture. Maybe it happens in a meeting, or at dinner, or during a conversation she's had 1,000 times before. Maybe it's a pause, a breath, a silence that lingers longer than usual. Maybe she walks away mid-sentence. Maybe she doesn't come back. To others, it looks like she's changed. They say she's distant, cold, not like she used to be. But they're wrong. She hasn't changed, she's returned. She's no longer performing the version of herself that kept everyone else comfortable while slowly killing her spirit. She's done playing nice at the expense of her truth. And yes, it's messy. It confuses people. It makes them uncomfortable. It disrupts the roles they've come to rely on. The peacekeeper is no longer keeping the peace. But for the first time in years, she feels something she hasn't felt in a long time. A flicker of clarity. A fragile, unfamiliar sense of self. Not perfect, not polished, but real. And that is enough. That rage they warned her about, the one she feared for so long, it's still there. But now she sees it differently. It's not chaos. It's not destruction. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's clarity. It's the part of her that says, this is not okay. It's the part that rises up when her value is dismissed, when her needs are ignored, when her boundaries are crossed for the 100th time. It's the part that refuses to keep shrinking just to make others feel big. And the truth is, that voice inside her, the one she silenced for years, it never stopped speaking. It just got quieter, buried beneath guilt, softened by shame. But now she's listening. She's not trying to get rid of the anger anymore. She's learning to trust it, to hold it, to understand that it's not there to ruin her life, it's trying to return her to it. Because anger, when it's not twisted into guilt, is a compass. It shows where things have gone wrong. It points toward what needs to change. It draws a line and says, no more. She used to think she had to choose between being loved and being real. But now she knows. Being loved while hiding who you are isn't love at all. It's performance. And she's done performing. If any of this feels familiar, if it echoes something inside you that you've never said out loud, you are not broken. You are not too emotional, too dramatic, too much. You are just full of truths that were never given a voice. You are full of fire that was told to stay soft. You are full of instincts that were trained to stay silent. And maybe, finally, you're waking up. Maybe that anxiety isn't a disorder, it's a message. Maybe that tension in your chest isn't random, it's memory. Maybe that voice that says, I can't do this anymore, isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Because healing isn't always soft. Sometimes healing looks like fire, like boundaries, like saying no without a smile, like walking away when you've stayed too long, like letting the discomfort of truth burn through the comfort of pretending. You don't have to keep apologizing for your voice. You don't have to earn peace by sacrificing yourself. You don't have to be good to be worthy. You just have to be honest. And after everything you've been through, that is more than enough.